So when he woke up in the morning, he would say, "What good will I do today?" And then before he went to bed at night, he would say, "What good did I do today?" If your life mission involves serving others, taking care of yourself is not an opportunity. It's an obligation. 100% of the time, my brain is going to choose the quick dopamine hit. And that's why we find ourselves staring at our phones, doom scrolling at the end of the day. 3 things, look at these barriers, see what you can delete, see what you can delegate, and see what you can systemize to create those opportunities so that you have more free time. If you don't want work to take over everything, create a reason to say no. So in the early 1700s, there's a young man who had grown up in Boston, now living in Philadelphia, printer by trade. He had came from a family of 17 children. His dad was a soap maker, so he's not coming from money. He's in Philadelphia, 1700s. He's trying to make a living. He's a printer. He's barely making enough money to keep his head above water. And he's had 2 years of formal education. So his days were filled with mere survival. Now understand that when I say that this young man's days were busy, we think of our busy days, and our days are busy. We get taking kids to sports or going to work or getting ourselves ready or running errands. But in the early 1700s, busy meant, gee, I got to make sure I have fuel so I have heat in my room so I don't freeze to death. I have to go find food today because, oh yeah, we don't have refrigeration. So busy was based on survival. So this young man's days were filled with work and then survival. But he had this realization. He realized after he had tried to keep his head above water for a long amount of time, he realized, wait a minute, if I want to improve my station, if I'm just surviving, if I don't have any time for my own growth or my own sanity, I can't grow and improve my station. So the first thing this young man did was he decided that he would have a mantra for when he woke up in the morning and when he went to bed. So when he woke up in the morning, he would say, "What good will I do today?" Kind of set a vision and intention for the day by saying, "What good will I do today?" And then before he went to bed at night, he would say, "What good did I do today?" And once he started doing this, he realized in the days that he just lowered his head and grinded and created no space for himself to grow his mind, his body, his beliefs, he'd have trouble coming up with, well, what good did I do today? So he committed. And again, early 1700s, this guy is on the edge of survival in a city. He decided, I have to create time for me to grow. Even if it's only 10 minutes, even if it's only a half hour, whatever it is, even if it's only a couple times a week, I have to create this time because I want to improve where I'm at in my life. And this young man's name was Benjamin Franklin. So he famously began to wake up early. He started to get up earlier than anyone he knew. He started writing every day. He realized that his education was behind because remember, he'd only had 2 years education. So he had started reading every single day, teaching himself things. He made sure he had time to daydream. And again, this was, sometimes it was 5 minutes, sometimes it was an hour, sometimes it was 10 minutes, but he made sure it was in his schedule, particularly early in the day. And we know what happened to Benjamin Franklin. He just happened to improve his station in life, become one of the most significant founders of our country of the United States. Now, I share that story with you because one of the biggest challenges that I have, that I know that you have, that many of the people that I consult with, many of my clients have, is that there's things that we want to do. We know that there's strategies, and we know that there's hobbies, and we know that there's habits, and we know that there's just pastimes we enjoy that fill our tank. But the problem is we've gotten so busy, so crazy overwhelmed that we've abandoned them. And when I am talking with leaders and with many of my clients, I'll share some of the strategies that we know that, remember, body, brain, and belief, some of these strategies that can help improve their life. But they're like, Brett, that sounds great, but I don't have me time. I don't have time for me. And boy, I can relate. I mean, just today, in order for me to get here to shoot this podcast, I had to move heaven and earth to get my daughter to soccer practice and My dog had surgery and all these different things. I'm a single father. Life can be overwhelming. Comedian Jim Gaffigan has a bit where he talks about if you want to know what it's like to be a parent, particularly with multiple kids, said it's like you're drowning and someone hands you a baby. And I understand the feeling. And that is to be overwhelmed and to feel like there's no time for you is a very valid feeling. Life can be absolutely overwhelming. But here's the thing with feelings. Feelings aren't necessarily facts. All too often, our emotional system that helps create these feelings can hijack our brain. And I always talk about feelings and beliefs. Feelings are valid, but feelings are passing. Beliefs are where we live. Beliefs are how we see the world. And sometimes when feelings happen over and over and over again and they're unchecked, we start to believe that they're true. So what happens is we have a couple really busy days, or we're transitioning from maybe a job or even a big transition in life, going from college to work or from just working to working with a family. We go through this transition period and things change and we say, oh my gosh, my time is so full now. Pretty soon we have this frantic feeling. It becomes a belief that I don't have any time for me. Again, it's a valid feeling, but feelings aren't always facts. So today, what I want to do is I want to share with you some of the self-imposed barriers that we place in our own lives between us and having the time, creating the time for us to do those things every day or every week or every month or even throughout the year that excite us, that help us grow, to make us feel like we have some agency over our life, that we are not just slaves to the grind, that we do have some me time. So I want to share 3 of those barriers, but I also want to share 3 things that you can do today, right now, to start turning that around. So even by this evening, or whatever time it is for you during the day, within a few hours, you can create some time to do something that inspires you. So to start, let's look at the barriers that we create. Now, there's all kinds of barriers between us and free time. There's all kinds of external barriers. We intend to do something, the kid gets sick or our dog's sick, or we have this person at work that's getting in our way, or our secretary lets our schedule get filled up even though it's not supposed to. We have all kinds of external barriers. But what I've learned from working with thousands of people, it's usually not those external barriers that are the most consistently getting in the way of us and the things that we want to do on a daily basis that fill our cup, fill our tank. The first barrier that's important to acknowledge is that most of the people that I've spoken with, and I've fallen into this as well, when the topic of me time, when the subject of me time comes up in the conversation, they'll say, Brett, I just don't have any me time. And I ask the question, what is me time in specific terms to you? What is it? What is it that you need time or want time for? And I can tell you this in all honesty. Thousands of conversations. I have never, not one time, had anyone answer that question objectively and directly. I've never had anyone say, I want 20 minutes to be able to play the guitar. I want 15 minutes to be able to go for a walk. It's always well, I don't know, just time to whatever, and of course, I remember the times, particularly when I was in college, living with a bunch of roommates. I didn't have a family and a mortgage and a career and a job. I just had to go to class. I was looking for things to fill my time. I'd be like, God, I got 5 hours this afternoon. Might as well go to the gym. You know what I'm talking about? And then all of a sudden, life is not like that. So what we're saying when we say, I don't know, I just kind of we're saying, yeah, I want things to go back to the way they were. And unfortunately, they won't. However, all of us know of something that fires us up. All of us know of something that puts us in that state of flow. And that's going to be different for everybody. So if you're not clear as to what exactly it is that's me time, that's a barrier. Because if you don't know what you're chasing, you're never going to find it. Now, the second thing that's a barrier to all of us is the concept of martyrdom. Now, it is a very noble thing to serve others. And many people that I've spoken with throughout the organizations that I've worked with, friends, family, they've come to this mindset, and it's well accepted in society that, well, I serve other people and I'm going to give everything from me and I just don't have anything left, but that's okay. I'm going to martyr myself. I'm going to give everything of myself, not fill my tank and just give it to everyone else. And we see that because martyrdom's a noble thing. But here's the thing. Martyrs die. If you're martyring yourself, that means you're going to die for the cause. Now, if you're not here, whether it's actual physical death or it's your tank is empty, you've expired your passion and interest, well, that becomes a problem. How can you serve if you're at 30% battery? Are you really serving? If you want to serve your children, it's important that you're the parent, you serve your children, but you're so tired and exhausted, you feel imprisoned, you're starting to feel resentment towards them because you don't do any of these things that fill your tank. Is that really serving them? I would go so far as to say, if your life mission involves serving others, taking care of yourself it's not an opportunity. It's an obligation. If you're going to serve others, it's important to take care of yourself. So that second barrier we place on ourselves is we see this nobility of martyrdom, but remember, martyrs die. Taking care of yourself is an obligation if you want to serve others. And finally, understand that from the time we open our eyes in the morning, we are making decisions. Our brain is deciding, okay, should I stand up? Should I get ready? What should I wear? What should I eat for breakfast? What route should I take to work? How should I deal with this? Our brain is constantly making these decisions all day long. The longer the day goes, the more fatigued our brain becomes in making these decisions. So as the day comes to a close, we start to experience what's called decisional fatigue. This is why, by the way, one of the reasons you see a lot of the billionaires, they wear the same thing every day. They don't want the clothes they wear to have to be part of a major decision they're making that day because they're going to be making so many decisions. They don't want that decisional fatigue. So by the end of the day, if we're deciding, gee, should I sit here and watch TV or look at my phone where I can get a quick dopamine hit? Right away, I can get that dopamine hit. Should I do that? Or should I do something that really does fill my tank, but maybe going for a walk or listening to music or reading a book? It doesn't give me as fast of a dopamine hit. It actually takes some energy to create energy. If I'm deciding between those two things and my brain is fatigued, 100% of the time, my brain is going to choose the quick dopamine hit. And that's why we find ourselves staring at our phones, doom scrolling at the end of the day. So that decisional fatigue is a big barrier. So if we know that we get more fatigued as the day goes on, we can hack that by looking at some of the things that we really want to do in our life and adding it in the morning. And I know that the idea of waking up earlier or doing more in the morning is not attractive to most. But I can also say that most adults I know realize that me time truly exists early in the morning. So if it's important to you, understand you're going to make it easier for yourself to do these things if you overcome that decisional fatigue by doing these things in the morning. All right, so those three things are the biggest barriers. Again, there's a ton of external barriers, but what we'll find is these personal barriers that we create are more significant in standing in our way than these external ones on a regular basis when it comes to every day. So what can we do about it? If these barriers are here, we could just say, well, yeah, I can just get rid of the barriers. That's easier said than done. So I want to walk you through step by step how we can look at this, how I've helped myself, my friends, my family, my clients, the organizations I work with start to create and etch this out in their life to overcome those barriers. So the first thing I want to recommend you do, and again, this is where you might want to get a piece of paper, write some things down. Like I said, the number one barrier between you and me time is defining what me time is for you. Well, the first solution, the first way to overcome the barrier is to define what does me time mean to you? What specific thing? Maybe it's you want 30 minutes of just watching television. There's nothing wrong with watching television. Maybe you're like, yeah, I do want to look at my phone for 10 minutes. But do understand that as we start to dig in some of these things, it generally doesn't go for 10 minutes. But put time barriers on it. Maybe it's you want to exercise. Maybe it's you want to play the guitar, listen to music, read. Start by maybe thinking of a time in your life when you did have the energy that you were proud of. Call this your gold standard. And that's one of the activities I do with all my clients. It's called the gold standard of you. So we really take them back. I take my clients back to this time in their life that they're really proud of. They felt like they showed up as the best version of them. And we list what were your habits, what were your hobbies, what were your daily strategies and practices. And when they look at this, they realize, oh my gosh, where did all of these go? No wonder I'm feeling absolutely exhausted all the time, because where are the things that really fill my cup and energize me? So write those down. Write this down. If you have less than 30 minutes, what's something you could do? How about 60 minutes or less? A day or less? A weekend or less? Or more than a weekend? For me, if I have less than a half hour, I'm probably going to read, might meditate. That's me time. If I have an hour, I'm probably going to exercise, work out. If I have half a day, I'm probably going to go surfing, go to the beach. If I have a half day or a full day, probably going to do that. Probably going to go to the beach. I have a weekend, I'm going to go camping. I'm going to go to the mountains, try to go skiing. So once you define these things, you can start to say, okay, maybe you scale them. This is something that I'd always see. I'll talk to someone and they'll say, well, yeah, Brett, but I like to cycle and I like to cycle like 40 or 50 miles. Taking 2 to 3 hours in a weekday to do that might not be realistic in your schedule. It might be, but for most, it's probably not very realistic. How can you take that and scale it so that maybe a couple times a month or maybe once on the weekend you can get out and go for 3 hours, but on the weekday, how could you scale that thing to where you could do it in a half hour? Maybe you have you get like a Peloton or you go to a class or something. So that concept of scale is critical here, because we can scale things within the unit of time. So you're like, Brad, I like to go for a 3-hour walk in the woods. Well, maybe we can't do that, but maybe we can go for a 20-minute walk or a 30-minute walk. Or maybe we can do it twice a week, not every day. Maybe you can go for a hike. Make sure you go for a hike once a month. If you love being in nature, but you don't live near nature, maybe going for a hike in nature once a month. Again, it's just making sure it's part of your life. Of course, I would love to go skiing and surfing all day, every day, and mountain biking. That would just fill me up, but that is not realistic within my life. So I have to say, well, yep, I get a mountain bike on Mondays and Fridays at this time for this amount of time. So define what it is. Look at the things in your life that have lit you up. Define what it is that you want to do with your me time, and then scale it. Make sure you scale it, and then put it in your calendar. Create that reason to say no when someone else tries to come in and take that time from you. Because here's one thing I can guarantee you. Someone else is going to come in and try to take that time from you. So you better have a very compelling reason to say no. All right, so step one. We got by step one. We defined it. You know what you can do if you have less than 30 minutes, 60 minutes, if you have a full day, a weekend, or more than a weekend. We got those on paper. We can see, we can scale them, we can put them in the schedule. Next thing you're going to look at is, what barriers are you putting up in your schedule? What are you doing instead of? And what your immediate response is going to be, because I know this, I've had this conversation, I've said it myself, is, well, Brett, kids, work, life. Again, that's feelings jumping in with a panic response because we've had a couple overwhelming days, and it's jumping in, it's created a belief. But in reality, when I've walked my clients through auditing their time, they're completely blown away by how they spend a majority of particularly their free time. Now, if we're talking about the average American spends their free time between 2 to 5 hours a day. Again, 2 to 5 hours a day consuming non-work related media. So we're looking at social media, watching, streaming things, looking at YouTube, all those different things, 2 to 5 hours a day. That's the average American. Now, the average American is also complaining that they don't have any me time. If me time to you is something like looking at your phone or watching TV, That's not a problem. However, here's the challenge. When we go for these quick dopamine hits, Daniel Lieberman has written a book with, I think it was Michael, I wrote it down here, Michael Long. And it's called The Molecule of More. And if you haven't had a chance to read Daniel Lieberman, he's an evolutionary physiologist. It's fascinating. So he's talking about how the human body has worked since the beginning of time. And we all know that dopamine is this reward. It's this reward molecule. When we do something that our body or brain likes, we're rewarded, we feel good. But his argument is actually it functions more of a molecule of more. In other words, when we get hit with dopamine, all we want is more dopamine. So if we sit down to look at our phone and we get a quick dopamine hit, our brain's not going to say, okay, that's enough dopamine. It's going to say, hey, scroll, keep giving me more, give me more. Pretty soon 2 hours has gone by. So be careful with those things. But look at your time. I have an app. You can go to brettklika.com. You can download the free productivity tracker that we have. I'll put a link for that at the bottom of the podcast here. That way you can go through every 30 minutes, a beeper goes off. You put down what you're doing and it will compile the data for you. And at the end of 3 days, you have graphs, pie charts to show you how you're spending your time. So you might realize that, oh my gosh, I'm spending my time just kind of walking around the house. I'm spending 2 hours doing dishes. I'm spending an hour and a half doing laundry. Now, those things need to get done, but do they need to take that amount of time? So once we start to see these barriers, once you've audited your time in an objective way, I don't mean you've just said, well, Brett, I got kids and I got family and I got to cook and I got this and I got that. Well, no, audit that time in an objective way, because then we can start to look at those barriers and decide, well, what can be deleted? What doesn't need to be here at all, but I'm doing it? Delete it, get rid of it. What can be delegated? What can you talk to a partner or get your kids to do? My daughter's learned how to do the dishes, unload the dishwasher. She makes dinner one night a week. I've delegated because I do need some time to stay sane as a dad. So delegate, systemize. Now, as a single dad, with my company and with the other things I like to do with my daughter and her sports and all that, when it comes to things like doing the dishes and doing the laundry and keeping the house clean and all those different things, I really hate doing that stuff, but it's got to get done. And I don't want it taking up the time I need to do the things that fill my tank. So I've learned how to systemize it. I can empty the dishwasher in less than 2 minutes. I can fill the dishwasher, regardless how full the kitchen is, I can fill the dishwasher very quickly because I got a system. I know how I can pick up the house. I got a way to pick up the house that takes the least amount of time. I can do the laundry in minutes. Look at what's taking up this time that could be your me time and systemize it so that you could get better. So 3 things, look at these barriers, see what you can delete, see what you can delegate, and see what you can systemize to create those opportunities so that you have more free time, more me time. Now, finally, and this is where we get a little bit deeper. Working with so many, particularly organizations, one of the biggest, and leaders and individuals, one of the biggest, I guess, complaints, you could call it, is that, and I felt this in my life too, is we say, well, gosh, work is this and work is my source of stress. And if I just didn't have work, I could do more. And we often see work as a barrier. And the time we spend at work, I mean, listen, we spend a good share of a portion of our life at work. One of the biggest sources of stress in our life is work. But understand that one of the reasons that we're compelled to put our energy towards work, even when we're not there, is because our careers, and this is intentionally built by organizations, they have what I call a structure of significance. So our careers, the places we work, they know what creates meaning in our life. Things like challenges, rewards, incentives, accountability. All of those things drive us to grow. And when we grow, it makes us have a sense of fulfillment, a sense of validation. I was in working with the different companies. One of the organizations I got to work with was the CIA. And because those operators since 9/11, their operational pace has doubled, tripled, quadrupled, and they're burning through their agents. And so they needed to find a way, how can we prevent burnout? How can we retain our top talent? So I'm working with the team, and they're overwhelmed. They're very negative. Everything we talked about was pretty much, yeah, I would, but my job. I would, but my job. I would, but my work. To the point where I just shut everything down for a second. I said, okay, let's stop. Let's talk about this. Is your work truly nothing but negative in your life? Is your work truly the barrier between you and happiness? Or has work really helped you grow in your life? And so I split them up into groups and they had this conversation. When we came back together, they realized, yeah, the work that we do, I realized that work has been the primary driver of growth in my life. Now, not that my relationships and all the things I've learned outside of work haven't been important, but work is what's pushed me. Work is what has allowed me to learn new things about people, to learn me new skills. So at the end of this conversation, they realized that work wasn't the biggest obstacle in their life. Work actually allowed them to grow. But here's the thing. When work is the only thing in our life that we've structured to allow us to grow, even in our free time, we're going to be like, I kind of want some of that because I get accountability, I get validity, I get validation, I get all of these different things from my work that I haven't created in my private life. So if you want to have some time in your private life, if you don't want work to take over everything, create a reason to say no. In other words, create some structure with your free time. And I know that you're like, well, Brett, it's free time. I don't want to have structure in free time. But we just got to understand how our brain works with meaning and significance. It's always going to lean towards those things. So in order to create a reason to say no, in other words, create a reason to say no to work and to do something in our personal life, or to say no to an obligation, do something for ourselves. The first thing is obviously clarity. We need to know what we're going to do. Imagine if you went to work and they're like, I just work today. I don't care, just work. No, we know exactly what we're working on. The second thing is accountability. So that might mean if you want time away from work or me time, maybe you sign up for a yoga class or a massage, or you commit to go walking with a friend, or you have someone or something that keeps you accountable to actually using that time. So you have a reason to say no. And then finally, is there an assessment? Have you realized, gee, I've done that 2 times a week. My goal is 2 times a week, and I've done it 2 times a week. Is there a way to say, well, how are you doing? Have you utilized your me time? Ben Franklin writes about how he devised this system of moral check-in. So virtue check-in that he would do every night. He would give himself a score. He wrote down these virtues that were important to him, and every night before he went to bed, he would give himself a score because he found that kept him continually committing to making himself better because he wanted this score. It was a sense of accountability and a sense of assessment. Imagine if your work never gave you any feedback. Imagine it was just sort of like, yep, just come to work and 30 years later, we'll give you your retirement watch. So create a structure of significance, an objective structure of significance in your life outside of work. That is where you're going to create that me time. And I know that doesn't sound sexy, but in order to break the chains of finding the only place in your life where you get validation is work, it's going to help you create that validation in your private life by using that structure. And it gives you that reason to say no. So again, the 3 things we look at is first, define. If we want to overcome the obstacles that stand between you and me time, define exactly what it is you want to do and scale it to fit the confines of your life. Maybe it can't be every day. Maybe it can't be 2 hours. Maybe it's 20 minutes twice a week, but it's still a part of your life. It still has that opportunity to energize you. Second, audit your time and energy. Don't just give in to the emotional hijack and say, I just got too much. Audit. Where are you spending your time and energy? What can be deleted? What can be delegated? And what can be systemized to create more time and energy? And finally, create a structure of significance outside of your work. Look what keeps you motivated at work and create that in your private life. Because once you start doing it, pretty soon you're not going to need it because you're just going to understand it. You're going to understand how important it is to exercise or to play the guitar or whatever it is that fires you up. So there you have it. Life is not going to be perfect. Life can be overwhelming. Life can be stressful. But remember, just like Ben Franklin, when he realized that if he doesn't create that space for himself, he's not going to grow. I said it earlier. I want to say it again. If serving others and growth is part of your life, it's part of your life mission, then creating time for yourself to grow every day is not an opportunity, it's an obligation. And I suggest you treat it as such. So thanks for coming out with me today. I hope you've taken something home that can change your life. If you have, please share this podcast with someone that you know that could absolutely transform their life. So, Brett Klika, live, labor, and love with purpose. And I hope to see you soon.